Welcome back to our CBSN Originals Powerless, the high cost of cheap gas. Before 2007, West Virginia issued only a few dozen permits for horizontal drilling. Over the last decade, it has issued nearly 5,000. I spoke with Ken Ward Jr., a reporter at the Charleston Gazette-Mail in West Virginia, about the natural gas boom and how it's creating a new clash between landowners and the companies that drill on their land.
The huge amount of natural gas that's present in parts of West Virginia, the north central and northern panhandle of the state. The Marcellus Shale is a huge formation that's just chock full of gas. It stretches from Appalachia all the way to New York, and natural gas is increasingly cheap because of horizontal drilling techniques and hydraulic fracturing. So there's a lot of companies kind of flooding into the area trying to take advantage of that and drill this really valuable gas to provide energy for the country.
And that sort of brought this conflict between surface owners and mineral rights owners to a head there in West Virginia. Recently, there have been two major court cases involving gas property rights and drilling in West Virginia. Can you walk us through them briefly and explain why each one is so significant?
Sure. The first case had to do with a well pad that was put on somebody's property to drill for gas from all of the surrounding properties. In West Virginia, like a lot of mineral states, the land and the minerals are often severed. One person owns the surface, but somebody else owns the minerals. So in this case, a gas company came in and put a well pad. They drilled a bunch of wells on the surface of a family's farm in order to get gas from all of these surrounding properties. If you own the minerals, you have the right, whatever's reasonably necessary to get at gas. But in this case, the state Supreme Court said, no, you can't come in and put a well pad on one piece of property in order to get the gas from all of these neighboring surrounding properties. So that's set a very firm line that kind of behavior by a gas company, when they don't have permission from the surface owner, that's trespassing and that won't be allowed. And in this other case, the people who were suing the gas company were people who didn't have well pads or wells on their property generally. They just lived in the area where the drilling and the gas production was going on. And they argued that all of the truck traffic and the noise and the dust from the gas production was a nuisance to them and was inhibiting their ability to enjoy their lives and their property. And in that case, the state Supreme Court upheld a lower court ruling which dismissed the case. But what the court didn't do in that case is set some sort of firm rule for, well, this sort of behavior is acceptable by a gas company and this sort of behavior is not. And one of the justices, Margaret Workman, in that case, was very critical of the majority opinion and said, you know, this is really a point in time when we need to set some legal standards saying this is what's acceptable and this is what's not, and we need to balance these interests. But the court didn't do that. So in the one case, the court set a very firm sort of guideline, but in the other, it didn't. So in those sorts of situations, we're likely to have continued battles between surface owners and gas companies over the way the gas is being extracted and the way that the communities are having to bear some of the burden of that production.
And it seems to me that Judge is right. These cases seem to be begging for some legal clarity, because who defines the word reasonable there? You know, that's a real gray area.
Sure. I mean, what's reasonable on my property might not be what you think is reasonable on yours, and
right.
it really is in the eye of the beholder.
Unless the courts set some clear legal standards. Is there any indication that they may be close to doing that?
Well, I think that probably what we're going to see is more litigation over this, and that perhaps at some time in the future the court would address that in a more concrete way, but it certainly didn't in this case.
And so what do these decisions then mean for the immediate future of drilling in West Virginia and the rest of the country? I mean, understandably, the laws of West Virginia are different than the laws in other states, but there are other states that are grappling with similar issues.
The long-term future for the gas industry here, what this means partly is that if gas companies want to come in and put a pad on my property in order to get the gas from all of my neighbors, they're going to have to get my permission. And that puts surface owners in a much stronger position to negotiate and to get paid, giving away some of their property right to have that well pad there in order to get paid. So the gas drilling is going to continue. This just maybe sets a little more of a level playing field in some circumstances.
Now, there does seem obviously to be growing concern from landowners that their rights are being trumped by the companies who own the mineral rights. Can lawmakers do anything to strengthen surface owner rights, perhaps by looking at some other states like Colorado that have stronger rights for surface owners?
There's been legislation that's been proposed and pending for a number of years in West Virginia, Surface Owners' Bill of Rights, which would help surface owners that don't own their minerals. It would give them a greater say over if a company's going to put a well pad, where on their property it goes, where the road goes, where the tanks go. And so certainly, the legislature could pass a Surface Owners' Bill of Rights to level the playing field. There's been legislation that's been pending for a number of years that would change what they call a setback, kind of a buffer zone between an occupied home and a well pad or drilling activity. And the legislature could expand that and create more of a buffer zone. It could create more air monitoring. It could put more restrictions on the truck traffic and the hours that the trucks can run, and require more dust controls. There's many, many things that surface owners have been asking the state legislature here in West Virginia to do for many years that the legislature has not done.
And why then has this Surface Owners' Bill of Rights languished?
Industries that provide a lot of jobs and have a lot of economic power also have a lot of political power. And so the legislature increasingly here has members who have connections with and are philosophically aligned with the gas industry, who believe that these jobs are good for their communities, and believe that natural gas is a part of the economic future for West Virginia. And there's also a lot of members of the legislature in West Virginia. It's controlled by Republicans here, and there's a lot of sort of anti-regulatory rhetoric and positions that get thrown around. So it's considered very kind of popular to try to, rather than protect landowners, it's popular to kind of strip away the regulations that are intended to provide those protections.
Well, let's drill down a bit, no pun intended, on this argument that the industry lobbyists point to, which is that the natural gas boom is an engine of job growth for the state. How crucial is it for the West Virginia economy?
Well, certainly in counties where natural gas production is greatly increased, there's a 5 or 6 county area where most of the drilling is concentrated. The industry provides a lot of jobs. They're good paying jobs, and it pays a lot of taxes. What's interesting about all of that is, while the natural gas industry lobbyists spend a lot of time parading around how many jobs that they generate, they kind of more quietly often spend time in court trying to chip away at the tax laws and the way the tax laws are applied, so they can reduce those tax payments that the companies have to pay. So while the natural gas industry certainly is a big economic engine for our state right now, it's not clear that those benefits are being kind of uniformly shared. Some of the counties where natural gas is big are also remain very poor counties and are classified as kind of troubled counties by the Appalachian Regional Commission.
And of course, coal, which was long West Virginia's most dominant industry, is now ailing. Natural gas is sort of the natural next step as a powerful economic and political force there. Is the state making the same mistakes, though, again here with a different fossil fuel?
Well, we see a lot of evidence that West Virginia is not learning from its history. The relationship between West Virginia and the coal industry there's a lot of positives that the coal industry provided, but there's a lot of negative things too: black lung disease, mine disasters, polluted streams, air pollution. And we see a lot of evidence that the state is making the same kinds of mistakes. We're weakening environmental regulations because the industry wants them weakened. We are not really planning for the day when this fossil fuel might be gone. West Virginia created what's called a future fund to set aside tax money from the coal and gas industries to fund future economic development and infrastructure and education programs, kind of a program to use mineral wealth to plan for a more diverse economy. But the states never put any money into the fund. So it's the same sort of situation that we've seen play out with the coal industry, and the states' relationship is turning out to be just as troubled.
Of course, your focus is West Virginia, but do you see this becoming an issue in places beyond West Virginia?
The natural gas industry is booming in a lot of places across the country, and we also see the coal industry on the decline. And one of the big challenges, I think, for example, for the environmental community, which doesn't like coal and doesn't like natural gas any more than it likes coal, one of the big challenges is looking for some sort of just transition for communities in places like southern West Virginia and eastern Kentucky, and increasingly in Wyoming, where coal is starting to take a downturn. These communities that have fueled the country's economic engine for many generations are, as we look to ways to have cleaner fuels and alternative energy, renewable energy, it really is incumbent upon policymakers in the country to put in place some protections to help ease the transition for places that are losing jobs as this happens.
Perhaps learn some lessons from the past as well. Ken Ward Jr. in Charleston, West Virginia, we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.